In a world where wars are no longer just fought with weapons but with data, influence, and algorithms, a social media app meant for fun dances and viral videos has become a lightning rod in a global power struggle. TikTok, the wildly popular short video platform owned by Chinese tech giant ByteDance, has found itself at the center of a high-stakes conflict between the United States and China. What began as an app for teenagers quickly evolved into a geopolitical flashpoint, igniting fears of espionage, digital propaganda, and the very control of information in the 21st century. This is not just a story of technology, it is a story of power, surveillance, national security, and the new digital Iron Curtain forming before our eyes. TikTok versus USA is no longer a corporate dispute. It's a modern tech Cold War. And the battle lines are being drawn in code, not combat. When TikTok launched internationally in 2017, few could have predicted its meteoric rise. By 2019, the app had exploded across the globe, especially in the US, where it became the top downloaded app on the Apple Store. With over 170 million American users, more than half the population, it quickly outpaced domestic platforms like Snapchat, Facebook, and even Instagram in engagement among Gen Z. But its success didn't go unnoticed in Washington. Beneath its quirky filters and viral dances, lawmakers saw something darker, a tool potentially controlled by a foreign adversary with the power to shape narratives, manipulate public discourse, and collect sensitive data at unprecedented scale. The fact that ByteDance, TikTok's parent company, is headquartered in Beijing set off alarms within U.S. intelligence agencies. They feared that under Chinese law, ByteDance could be forced to hand over user data to the Chinese Communist Party at any time. That suspicion would fuel a growing storm. The turning point came in 2020, when former President Donald Trump signed an executive order threatening to ban TikTok unless it was sold to an American company. Microsoft, Oracle, and Walmart all expressed interest, and negotiations were underway for months. Ultimately, the Trump administration's plans were stalled in court, but the sentiment stuck. The app, once seen as innocent entertainment, was now viewed by many as a digital Trojan horse. This wasn't just paranoia. Documents later revealed that ByteDance employees in China had accessed U.S. user data, contrary to previous company claims. Meanwhile, TikTok's powerful algorithm, capable of keeping users engaged for hours with uncanny accuracy, became a focal point of concern. The question wasn't just about what users were posting. It was about what they were seeing, how it was curated, and who was doing the curating. That's when the US realized it wasn't just fighting for data, it was fighting for minds. Behind closed doors, US national security agencies began building their case. In 2022, FBI Director Christopher Wray publicly warned that TikTok could be used for influence operations, potentially spreading misinformation and stoking political tensions among Americans. The warnings weren't abstract. Experts pointed to past examples in China where state-backed media had used digital platforms to sway opinion and silence dissent. Could the same tactics be deployed via TikTok in the West? The timing couldn't have been more delicate. With U.S. elections approaching and global tensions with China escalating, lawmakers worried that foreign adversaries could use the app to tilt the scales of democracy. Suddenly, a dance app had become a national security threat. TikTok pushed back hard. The company insisted it was independent from the Chinese government and even launched Project Texas, a multi-billion-dollar plan to store U.S. user data on American soil, managed by Oracle. They claimed this would effectively firewall U.S. operations from Beijing influence. It was a bold strategy. TikTok also increased its lobbying in Washington, spending millions to hire former government officials and legal experts. Their message was clear. TikTok is a private company, not a spy tool, but for many in Congress, the assurances weren't enough. As tensions between the US and China reached new highs over Taiwan, trade, and cyber warfare, TikTok became a convenient symbol of a larger conflict. The Cold War analogy was no longer theoretical. In many ways, the US saw itself in a technological arms race, and TikTok was the missile pointed directly at its digital heart. By 2023, bipartisan momentum was building for an outright ban. A slew of new bills were introduced to give the president the power to block apps controlled by foreign adversaries. Senators from both parties raised alarms about TikTok's influence on youth, its addictive design, and its potential use as a propaganda weapon. State governments followed suit, banning the app on official devices. The Biden administration quietly resumed pressure on ByteDance to divest TikTok. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, intelligence agencies continued probing ByteDance's internal communications, hunting for links to the Chinese government. What they found, or didn't find, remained classified. But the public messaging was clear. The risk was too great to ignore. But TikTok wasn't just a political football. It had become a cultural force. For millions of American users, especially younger generations, it wasn't just an app. It was their voice, their stage, their community. The idea of banning TikTok sparked massive backlash. Influencers with millions of followers rallied their audiences to protest. Some argued it was censorship. Others called it xenophobia. TikTok's defenders insisted that the platform had democratized content creation, giving underrepresented voices a chance to be heard. A ban, they claimed, would silence those voices and hand more power back to legacy play. Platforms like Meta and Google, ironically the same companies the US government has been trying to regulate for years. The line between security and freedom of expression had never been thinner. And yet the tech Cold War wasn't just about TikTok. It was part of a much broader digital conflict. Across industries, the US and China were locking horns over AI, quantum computing, 5G infrastructure, and semiconductor chips. In each case, the battlefield was digital, and the weapons were innovation, regulation, and control. The US banned Huawei. China restricted exports of rare earth minerals. Both countries accelerated efforts to decouple their economies. TikTok, in this broader context, was the most visible and arguably the most emotionally charged front in a deeper, long-term ideological battle. One side champions an open internet, despite flaws. The other promotes a state-controlled digital ecosystem. The future of global tech governance may well hinge on how this one battle plays out. In March 2024, the conflict escalated once again. The House of Representatives overwhelmingly passed the Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary-Controlled Applications Act. The bill gave ByteDance 180 days to sell TikTok or face a nationwide ban. The Senate soon followed. President Biden signed it into law, citing national security concerns. ByteDance announced it would challenge the law in court, setting the stage for a monumental legal showdown. For the first time in U.S. history, a foreign-owned app could be forcibly removed from American digital life. Civil liberties groups raised alarms, arguing that the move set a dangerous precedent. Would future administrations use similar laws to silence platforms they disliked? Was this truly about security or about control? Behind the legal arguments, technical teams at TikTok worked furiously to reinforce Project Texas. Servers were audited, data centers locked down. Oracle executives insisted they had oversight, but trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. Meanwhile, in Beijing, Chinese officials condemned the U.S. ban as economic bullying, accusing Washington of trying to crush a successful foreign company out of fear, not facts. They pointed out the irony. The United States, long seen as a champion of internet freedom, was now leading the charge to fragment the global web. China, in turn, hardened its own internet policies, further restricting foreign platforms and accelerating development of homegrown alternatives. For American tech giants, the implications were profound. If the U.S. could ban TikTok, what was stopping other countries from banning Instagram or YouTube in retaliation? The fear of a balkanized internet, where each country builds its own walled-off ecosystem, was no longer hypothetical. Already, nations like India had banned TikTok, citing similar concerns. The European Union launched its own investigations. The global internet, once seen as a unifying force, was fracturing into competing digital empires. And at the center of it all stood TikTok, no longer just an app, but a symbol of an era-defining clash. As the 2024 presidential election loomed, TikTok became an unexpected campaign issue. Some candidates vowed to finish the job and ensure the app's removal. Others pledged to fight the ban and protect digital rights. The debate reflected a larger identity crisis in American tech policy: how to balance innovation with security, freedom with control, competition with regulation. No consensus existed, and while the legal battles played out in courtrooms, the real war was happening in the hearts and minds of users who opened the app daily, unaware or perhaps indifferent to the geopolitical storm brewing behind the screen. By mid-2025, the consequences of the tech Cold War were everywhere. US and Chinese tech firms no longer collaborated freely. Supply chains had shifted. Students studying AI and computer science found their research scrutinized. Venture capital moved cautiously, and a generation that once believed the internet would unite the world began to realize it might actually be dividing it. In the middle of this digital realignment, TikTok remained online for now, but its future hung by a thread. Its fate would be decided not just by courts, but by governments, regulators, and perhaps most importantly, by the people who used it. Whether it would be remembered as a victim of politics or a Trojan horse of foreign influence would depend on whose story prevailed. In the end, TikTok versus USA is about more than just one app. It's about a global confrontation over the soul of the internet. It's about two world powers wrestling for digital supremacy, with the rest of the world watching and choosing sides. It's about how much we're willing to sacrifice for safety, and what freedom looks like in a world where every click is counted. The Cold War of the 20th century was about missiles and walls. The Cold War of the 21st will be fought in clouds and codes, and TikTok, for better or worse, is the opening battle. This isn't just a legal or political issue, it's a reflection of how fractured the global internet has become. Countries no longer simply compete over borders, they compete over bandwidth, algorithms, and attention spans. The Cold War was fought in the shadows of nuclear silos. This one is being waged through smartphones, cloud servers, and code. The TikTok saga is only the beginning. So what happens next? Will ByteDance be forced to sell? Will the app vanish from millions of American phones? Or will the courts step in and protect what some view as a digital right? The outcome will shape not just the future of TikTok, but the future of every app, every platform, and every user navigating this new frontier of global tech warfare. As always, the real power lies with you, the viewer, the you, Sir, the citizen of the internet. What you choose to use, what you choose to trust, and what you choose to fight for will determine the digital landscape of tomorrow. Thanks for watching. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that shape our world. And tell us in the comments, do you think TikTok is a legitimate threat or just a convenient target? We want to hear your thoughts. Until next time, stay informed, stay curious, and stay connected.